1983, West London. 25-year-old Jackie Poole is assaulted and strangled to death in her own home.
It was such a nasty murder.
Despite a thorough police investigation, there's just not enough evidence to convict a killer. A local psychic believes she is visited by the victim's vengeful spirit. In a supernatural trance, she is taken back to the murder scene.
And I could see it as plain as anything. It was Pokey.
But what part would her visions of the name Pokey and a brown sweater play in solving this brutal crime?
I could feel Jackie saying to me, ring them now.
Would a psychic's paranormal powers or hard forensic science nail Jackie's killer? Saturday, the 12th of February, 1983. Ruislip, a busy suburb 17 miles west of central London. Local psychic Christine Holahan's sixth sense has been on high alert all weekend.
I knew something was wrong, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. A feeling of coldness in the room. I'd hear footsteps, I'd sort of hear the door opening and closing. It was a sense of feeling of gloom. I was wondering what was happening. This was extremely intense.
Was Christine's psychic experience connected to the incredible events that were about to be played out? The next day, a concerned friend of Jacqueline Poole contacts the police. The recently separated shop assistant hasn't been seen for 2 days and isn't answering her phone. A young police constable and the father of Jackie's boyfriend break in to discover that the popular 25-year-old has been sexually assaulted and strangled. Heading up the investigation team is Detective Superintendent Tony Lundy.
Well, first of all, there was no forced entry to the premises. So she'd let somebody in or they'd con their way in. There were no broken windows, doors, or anything. So it seemed pretty obvious it's somebody who she associates with.
Jackie has been strangled to death with a cord. Personal items have been stolen and her clothing is in disarray.
She was fanatical at wearing rings and necklaces and bracelets and stuff, but basically the lot had gone. I think there may have been something left on her finger that couldn't come off, but everything that could be removed had gone.
Jackie's body has lain undiscovered for some 48 hours. The killer has a head start. Police begin to interview Jackie's friends and family for vital clues and release details of the attack to the press.
It became obvious from a very early stage that it was going to be a difficult investigation because the fact there'd been no break into the premises, we were really looking at close connections. Her husband had left her some time before, so obviously he was a possibility as a suspect from the word go, and numerous names were flooding in really from the outset.
The night after the body is discovered, just 3 miles away, Christine Holahan claims her psychic abilities are put to the test once again.
And after a while, I could see a light starting to appear, and it started to get bigger, and eventually there was like a shape. And from the shape, I could see the outline of a young woman. She seemed very agitated and very sort of frustrated, and I sort of said, like, I'm going to take a chance here. So I said to her, the young lady that's been murdered. And so I said, is it Jackie Poole? And she said, Jackie Hunt.
Why is the spirit calling herself Jackie Hunt, and what connection does she have with the murder victim?
So I asked her, how did she want me to help her? So she told me that she knew who had murdered her. And I explained to her that I would have to have solid evidence. I couldn't go to the police and just say somebody appeared to me and said they were murdered. I had to be able to go to the police with something positive. And then all of a sudden, then she went. And I thought, oh, that's it, she's gone. I was anxious of going to the police in case I would give them information that they would think I got from other sources or from a paper.
Christine is desperate for more clues. Amazingly, the spirit returns the following night.
It was like I was watching a television scene. It's like I flashed onto another level. It was then that I felt I was taken on a journey. I was just feeling what she was feeling. I felt myself in this flat, and I got a terrible sense of feeling that I was being dragged in slow motion as if she was still going through it. And it was horrible. And I could see all the struggle, and I could see what was happening.
Christine believes she is a psychic witness to murder and sees a woman called Jackie Hunt being attacked by a young man. She claims she is shown the layout of the victim's home. It's not much to go on, but she cannot ignore the spirit's pleas for justice.
I started, realizing what she'd gone through, and thought, if I go to the police and I leave myself open to the person who actually murdered her, I started to think of lots of things. You're going to protect yourself. I was a bit afraid.
Christine is desperate to describe what she has seen to the police. But murder investigation teams are skeptical over the use of psychics, and she must risk ridicule.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to ring them, but I also knew that she just was not going to go away. So it's like she was my friend now. She wasn't just that she was a victim who came to me looking for help. She was now my friend. Eventually, I could feel Jackie saying to me, ring them now. I could hear it really plain in my ears, ring them now.
While the psychic builds up courage to call the police with crucial information, the murder investigation team work around the clock to nail the killer.
You don't often get called out to scenes of murder where a young lady has been beaten, strangled, and it was a very, very nasty crime scene.
With no sign of a break-in, police investigate the theory that Christine knew her killer.
She had many, many friends, all from her same age group, from being brought up in the area and so on. And we had to eliminate over 70 suspects. Many you could eliminate quickly, but many, many, many were explored at length, and that made it very difficult.
Christine Holahan claims she has visions of the murder sent to her by a spirit called Jackie Hunt. The local psychic feels she can no longer ignore the ghost's pleas for help and risks ridicule by contacting the police.
I must admit I'm not one who's much of a believer in that, but at the same time, obviously, any possibilities to help you, you're going to explore them.
Constables Andrew Smith and Tony Batters are sent to interview the psychic. Unknown to Christine, Tony Batters was the first police officer at the murder scene. Sadly, Tony passed away in 2003. His widow, Anne, remembers the day that would change his life forever.
I think it could well have been the first time he'd actually found a victim. And she was young. It was a horrific murder. Because he had been the first officer on the scene and had actually stayed at the scene for several hours, he knew the layout, what the situation was in the flat, things that had been broken or turned over or something that was out of place. He believed there would be nobody else who would know that detail other than himself.
If Christine's claims were true, then convincing this hardened skeptic with first-hand knowledge of the crime scene would be a major challenge.
I thought, oh God, here goes. And I was tuning and saying, oh, Jackie, I hope you're here. I really hope you're here at this stage. And she was. She went to explain everything that she could possibly explain. She went to as much details as she could possibly give me. I explained that when she came through, I asked her, was she Jackie Poole? And she said, Jackie Hunt.
The psychic's first piece of information is a hit. Tony Batters knows that Jackie Poole's maiden name is Hunt. They are the same woman.
Maybe I was hitting on something, but I didn't know what it was. I hadn't got a clue. She showed me around the house. She explained exactly where everything was.
Christine claims she is transported back to the crime scene and is able to see 2 cups in the kitchen, prescription forms, and a black address book. Amazingly, this tallies with what Tony has seen at Jackie's flat less than a week earlier. These details were not released to the press after the murder.
And I could see where she was lying, and I could see her hands There was 2 rings in particular he couldn't get off her hand.
Jackie's missing jewelry was reported in the local papers, but nothing specific had been mentioned about the 2 rings that had been left on her body.
She also sort of was very insistent that there was a jumper that he was going to be thrown away. And she said, it's important to get this jumper because if you don't, she said, it's going to be gone.
Christine claims that she never met Jackie or any of her acquaintances when she was alive. But during her trance, she uses the names of many of Jackie's friends and family. One name is a mystery.
She mentioned Barbara Stone, and she didn't give me any significance on the name, but I said, anything she gives me, I'll take on board.
No one on the investigation has ever heard of Barbara Stone. Despite the puzzling name, Tony is amazed by the psychic's insight.
At this point, he said, ask Jackie to describe her killer. And she explained he's 23. He had a birthday April or May, in Taurus. He had dark hair, dark skin. He had tattoo.
Christine seems to give the police officers a profile of the murderer. But nothing would be more useful than a name.
So I said I would just very quietly go into a trance. I really had to tune in very, very strong with Jackie. I had to really bring her into me close. And I could feel her. It was like as if she actually really came through, as if she was inside of me.
The psychic resorts to a technique called remote writing, which unlocks her unconscious. She hopes this psychic skill will reveal the all-important name.
Jackie helped me spell out the name. She'd actually got the attention of the police, and this was it. And I could see it as plain as anything. It was Pokey. I knew at that point I had actually hit something significant had happened, though he never actually quite said anything about it.
Over 20 years later, Christine Holahan returns to the room where she used a paranormal technique called remote writing to reveal a name of a killer.
No, it was like as if somebody had taken my hand and very, very slowly had actually written out the name, very slowly. And then it started to come up. The minute I'd written it, it came up very clear. And so we got Pokey. She said it was a nickname. It's a nickname. He's known as a nickname. And I can remember Tony saying to me, Pokey, are you sure? And I said, that's what, and I showed him. And he seemed quite taken back when he looked at what I'd written. It was like as if I'd sort of touched on a nerve.
The name Pokey sends shivers down the spine of the 2 detectives. It is the nickname of Anthony Ruark. He is a friend of Jackie's boyfriend and is well known by the victim. Ruark is already amongst the murder team's prime suspects and has already been questioned.
Well, I felt I'd done all I could possibly do, and I got a sense of feeling from Jackie as if she sort of was saying to me, look, if that's not convinced him, what is going to convince him?
That same day, Tony Batters returns to the murder squad convinced by the psychic's abilities.
He was just amazed, totally amazed that she could have that sort of information.
Now, Tony must persuade the rest of his team to trust the testimony of a ghost.
I'd said to Batters that she was telling us something that she'd heard from the locals, and she didn't have any information whatsoever that could assist us on the inquiry at all.
During the attack, Jackie had jewelry stolen. It is crucial in the hunt for her killer.
And my attitude was that when she can tell us where the jewellery is or something conclusive to assist us, then I'll believe in mediums. But at this stage, just don't waste my time.
The police discount the work of the psychic and set about extracting the truth from Pokey.
Not the easiest person to obviously break down, especially when you're interviewing them about a very, very horrible, serious murder. But the officers who did interview him were fairly convinced that he was involved. The difficulty was being convinced, and finding evidence to back it up is another matter.
Christine had told Tony Batters that Jackie's killer is a Taurus in his early 20s and that he is dark-haired, dark-skinned with tattoos. Amazingly, this corresponds with Pokey's profile. The spirit of Jackie was desperate to draw attention to a sweater. Police have already retrieved this vital clue. DCI Norman McKinley was to become closely involved with Jackie's case.
During the search of Tony O'Rourke's house, and in a dustbin, they found a jumper. This jumper was submitted to the forensic laboratory, and of course, fibers having come from Jacqueline's clothing, and also plaster particles, which was also found on Jacqueline's clothing, was also found on this jumper.
The evidence forensically links Pokey with Jackie, but the murder suspect has an explanation.
The problem that the police had was that Rourke knew Jackie. He did say that he had spoken to her during the week prior to her death, so contact had been made then.
Despite a psychic pointing the finger at Pokey and the police suspecting this known criminal, after a 15-month investigation, the team is shut down.
We have this evidence, we have that evidence, but it was never, ever going to be sufficient at that time to instigate a prosecution. So that was the low point, but closing it down when the family still had no solution to it was very, very disappointing.
Tony Batter's appeals to work with the psychic are ignored. Now he has to deal with the investigation team being disbanded.
Oh, he was very frustrated because they obviously had done a lot of work and they thought that they had enough evidence.
Christine believes Jackie is devastated that her killer walks free.
She was so angry in the sense that he walked away from the murder as if he had absolutely no feelings either way.
The psychic remains frustrated by the police skepticism.
I done the very best I could possibly do. I gave him the information. I trusted the information that Jackie gave me was accurate, and I knew there was nothing else I could really do. I always somehow believed that there would be justice someday. I just didn't know when.
Christine is certain the unsolved murder will be reinvestigated, and it is. In 1999, some 15 years after the main inquiry was shut down, Christine has another visitation from a troubled spirit.
And I could see an image of a blonde-haired woman. And I kept looking and I kept thinking that it looked like Jackie, but I said, I must be imagining this. Couldn't understand what the significance of that would be.
Unknown to the psychic, the police reinvestigate the 16-year-old murder case after an informant brings in new leads on a suspect that is not Pokey. Was the apparition a coincidence, or Jackie trying to let Christine know that the hunt for her killer had started again? In the intervening years, a cutting-edge DNA technology had been developed that should allow police to test forensic evidence taken from Jackie's flat 16 years ago.
The introduction of DNA low copy number, or LCN, was completely new. The DNA technology in 2001 and even today is very accurate, so much that the forensic scientists can identify one person in a billion from a DNA profile. We had every opportunity now to solve a murder, and particular for the benefit of Jacqueline's family, to ensure that justice was done for them.
Bodily fluids collected from the crime scene and skin extracted from under Jackie's nails are examined by forensic scientists. But the new DNA technology will take 12 months to deliver the results. The wait is agonizing.
I got a telephone call from the Home Office laboratory, and I couldn't believe it, that the bodily swab had produced a full profile.
Is Pokey the killer?
The DNA LCN match, the full profile, came down to Tony O'Rourke, who also is known as Pokey.
Amazingly, the results tally with the name that had been scrawled on a notepad by psychic Christine Holahan over 17 years ago.
He was arrested on Wednesday, the 24th of May, in a car park in Cirencester. He was arrested for the murder of Jacqueline Poole.
Pokey is stunned to discover that he is being arrested for a crime that he was certain he'd walked away from. And in August 2001, he is tried at the Old Bailey in London.
We've suspected him all these years, and now at last, hopefully, he's going to get his comeuppance and go away for a long, long time. Everybody was hoping that the verdict was going to go the right way. I was with, obviously, the brothers of the victim, and I mean, the evidence had been very strong, but you can never be 100% sure with juries. So they were very, very anxious and very, very, wary of the verdict.
Tony Batters attends the 2-week trial. The retired police officer had listed 130 specific points that Christine claimed she received from Jackie's spirit. Now, he wanted to see just how many were correct.
I think it would have been really that he needed to know for himself. He had to prove it for himself. But the amount of information that Christine did give, if that was available to other murder inquiries, then obviously it would be very valuable.
According to Tony's notes, an amazing 120 facts match information brought out during the trial, including personal details about Jackie, the layout of the crime scene, and how Jackie knew her killer.
Although Christine lived locally, she didn't know Jackie, she didn't know her family, she didn't know her circle of friends at all. But it's just in the amount of detail that she gave, and most of it was proven to be correct.
The new DNA evidence is used to establish Pokey was at Jackie's flat on the day of the murder. The plaster particles taken from the brown pullover that Jackie had told Christine about are also produced as evidence.
The jumper, which had been retained by police in a sealed bag from 1983, was produced in evidence at Rourke's trial and played a significant part.
Pokey amends his story and claims he visited Jackie on the night of the murder, but that she was alive when he left. The solid prosecution evidence challenges this, and after 2 weeks, the jury is unanimously convinced of Pokey's guilt, and he is sentenced to life imprisonment. Justice at last for Jackie's family.
And when eventually the guilty verdict was brought in, they were absolutely over the moon. I mean, they were virtually shouting out in joy.
There is one final twist in the tale. The mysterious name, Barbara Stone, given to police by Christine nearly 20 years ago, becomes another psychic hit.
During the Old Bailey trial, Tony was sitting next to one of Jackie's brothers, and he asked him, did the name Barbara Stone mean anything? And he said, well, yes, of course, it was Jackie's best friend, but she had been killed in a road accident about a year or two before Jackie had been killed. So that was the answer to the name.
Christine's involvement in the Jackie Poole case hits the headlines. Her psychic skills have converted Tony Batters into a true believer.
She'd have had to be pretty good. He thought the information must have come directly from Jackie, because there was no other way that Christine would have had the detail of information that she had given the police.
Christine receives one final visit from her old friend.
And she was smiling, and she had found happiness, and she seemed to have, she was a different person than I'd seen 18 years earlier. I felt very happy that she had found peace, and I sort of felt sad, because I felt like this was closure all around. Jackie was gone.
This extraordinary relationship had spanned nearly 2 decades.
She was very, very special. She'll be always a very special part of my life, one way or another.
Birmingham, England, January 2002. A young man vanishes. Police think he's a runaway, but a psychic has a vision of a brutal murder.
His head was pushed down and he had a blow to the head. He's describing this as if he's watching himself. He's also shown me that he's been buried underwater.
Can she convince the cops a killer is on the loose and put him behind bars? Or will the mystery surrounding this young man's disappearance remain unsolved forever?
It was really horrific. It was frightening.
Birmingham, a bustling city in the heart of England and a centre of business and finance. But like any major city, Birmingham has its problems. Over 23,000 violent crimes were committed last year. Detective Daly is a cop whose job it is to catch the culprits. But when good old police methods fail to find missing local man Mark Green, it's to this woman, Diane Lazarus, that she turns. Diane Lazarus is a psychic, and today she's in Birmingham to help Detective Daly solve the riddle of Mark's disappearance. The story starts here in January 2002. 31-year-old Mark Green is out with a friend in the city centre. When he doesn't return home, his parents begin to worry.
They called the police quite soon after the concerns became quite concrete, and they reported Mark as a missing person.
Detective Marcella Daly is placed in charge of the missing person inquiry.
Mark was a 31-year-old man that came from the Stetchard area of Birmingham. He was a lecturer at a local college in art and design. He had a great bunch of friends, two very loving parents and a very good supportive family setup.
Mark's disappearance sends shockwaves through Birmingham's gay community. No one can understand why he would go missing or where he would go. Detective Daly's first task is to interview Mark's friend.
Mark's friend wasn't treated as a suspect as such, however, he was a vital person within this missing person investigation, and he held vital information, and he was incredibly supportive towards the investigation.
He tells officers what happened on the night in question.
The night that Mark disappeared, he went out with some friends, decided that he was going to go on to another club, and his friend took the bus home. Mark was last seen alive on the 17th of January, outside, actually leaving the nightclub called Kudos in Birmingham city centre. He was seen leaving through the main doors, and then he was later seen just outside by CCTV.
There are tens of thousands of closed-circuit television or CCTV cameras in Birmingham, but unfortunately Mark is only seen by one. Police make appeals on local radio for information about Mark's disappearance.
You're listening to Birmingham City News. It's Monday, the 28th of January. West Midlands Police are launching an appeal for information relating to the disappearance of 31-year-old college lecturer Mark Green. Mark was last seen in the city centre on Thursday evening. There is concern for his safety and police...
But no new information comes forward. In desperation, Detective Daly hits the streets and begins interviewing hundreds of potential witnesses.
Hi. Can I just let you have a look at that, please? It's a missing person inquiry. This is a missing person inquiry. This is a missing person inquiry. Missing person inquiry. Have you seen this person at all?
No, I haven't.
Have you seen this person at all?
Not at all.
Can I just give you that? OK, thank you. There was obviously contact with a range of friends, and also friends that perhaps he had lost contact with. There was also contact with other areas that he'd been to in his life, whether it be university or friends that he'd visited. There was nobody that came to light that would have any need or intention to hurt Mark in any way.
The police are baffled by the case. It seems Mark just disappeared into thin air. For Mark's parents, waiting for news of their son is heartbreaking.
Anne and Don Green, throughout this investigation, were incredibly brave and have my utmost respect. It's very difficult to actually wake up every day knowing that your son's His son's not there, and nobody can find him, and nobody can explain whilst he's not there.
It's now been 2 months since Mark went missing. Over 150 miles away in Wales, psychic Diane Lazarus is holding a private séance for a woman called Myron Green. She wants to contact her daughter who died the previous year.
The reading is taped for you, just in case his message is passed on for other people. I'll not only talk about you, I'll talk about your family members as well.
Diane's séances are incredibly detailed. To help her clients remember what is said, she records everything to tape.
I've got a young lady coming through called Sian, and I feel that she passed over in an accident. She's saying that she loves you. She's now bringing in a gentleman called Mark. She's putting her arm right around him and bringing him forward. And she's saying that he's definitely passed over.
Diane thinks that the man is Mark Green. She didn't know that Mark is Myron's nephew or that the police think he's a missing person. Was he in fact dead?
I hadn't heard anything about Mark Green at all, in all honesty. You know, the first I heard of Mark was literally through doing that reading. Yes, this is definitely a gentleman called Mark.
But that's my nephew, and he's only missing. He's not dead.
I remember Myra was literally shaking her head saying, no, you can't have him. So I went in to describe Mark. He's got brown hair. He's got a lovely smile. He's saying he likes art. He's also shown me steps towards a college, so I feel he worked in a college. He showed me he used to carry a rucksack. He was always in a rush.
Well, that's my nephew. He's a lecturer, but he's not dead.
He's definitely passed over in the spirit world. He's quite distressed because he's saying that
Diane's description is so accurate, Myron has no choice but to believe. She's very upset, but worse is to come.
Mark is telling me that he's not missing. He has not walked away from his parents. He's quite distressed because he's saying that he's been murdered. I don't think for 1 minute that she expected this to happen, simply because she thought she was coming for a reading, she might have a message from her daughter, but she was really taken back by the fact that I had Mark in front of me.
Diane describes what she believes happened to Mark on the night he disappeared.
He's saying that he went to a nightclub, and as he walked from there, he was attacked. He's saying that he had this nasty blow, something really heavy hit him at the back of his head. He's saying that he's buried underwater. And then went on to say that it was a lady that's going to help solve the case. It was a lady that was short hair, nice eyes. He also mentioned there was going to be a television appearance, and after that, the crime will all be solved.
But is Diane right? Has Mark been killed and buried underwater? Were the police wrong in thinking he is just missing?
Myra was really taken back. I remember seeing her slumped in the chair, just couldn't believe what I just told her. And she said she was shaking with this tape in her hand, saying, I know what I'm going to do with this tape. I'm going to pass this on and get it to the police.
The next day, Myron sends the tape recording of Diane's séance to the police. It lands on Detective Daly's desk. But will it convince her that Mark is not a missing person?
Mark is telling me that he's not missing. He's been murdered.
Detective Marcella Daly is in charge of the missing person investigation.
I think on hearing the tape, my feelings were a little bit mixed at first. It's a very difficult thing to kind of listen to, but I thought it was important to remain open-minded.
He's saying he's got jeans on. He had a denim jacket on at the time that he was murdered.
She came up with information with regards to the location, interesting information connected to Mark's parents, but she also came up with information with regards to me, which was quite surreal, really.
There's a police officer, a lady. She's got short hair, lovely eyes.
And she described me as a key figure in the investigation.
On the tape, Diane can be heard describing Mark's appearance, his movements that fateful night. She tells of a blow to the back of the head and a burial underwater.
There were some elements that weren't what perhaps you would call guessable. You know, there was some information, some factual information with regards to this inquiry that we purposely kept out of the media. And Diane had touched on a number of these points.
Detective Daly asks Mark's parents permission to contact Diane.
Approaching Al and Don about the information on the tape was a little bit difficult, but they felt like any information that was coming through on Mark, that it really needed to be looked at.
I had a phone call then from the West Midlands Police, Marcella Daly, and she was asking me, how do you know about Mark's murder? How do you know all these details? There's no way you could know all these details. She was very much taken back as well, and I felt I was being really questioned, big time. So I just answered as best as I could and tried to explain that I'm not a crackpot. Mark is in the spirit world, and he's given me the information.
Got very good vibes from speaking to her, and she seemed genuine and very supportive to what she wanted to help, and she agreed to come down to Birmingham to meet me.
I was really nervous when I was invited up, but pleased as well, because I felt I'm going to get closer to this. I'm going to help Mark to hopefully find his body and deal with it.
The involvement of a psychic medium was completely new to me, but she had vital information with regards to Mark's disappearance that really I couldn't afford to ignore.
Detective Daly decides to team up with psychic Diane Lazarus. She takes her to the place where Mark was last seen alive. Can she make a psychic connection with Mark and help convince Detective Daly that he has been murdered?
She felt a very strong feeling to walk in a particular direction, and that direction was actually supported by CCTV footage of Mark, and in fact it was actually the last footage that I had of Mark.
The CCTV here, just that one there, we've actually got a picture still of Mark just standing here actually chatting to somebody. We don't know who that person is and they haven't come forward.
I could literally see Mark ahead of me, and he's saying, walk this way.
Diane believes that Mark is guiding her and Detective Daly along the route he took the night he disappeared.
To him. Mark literally showed me in great detail which way to walk.
Just want to go straight down here.
Okay. We said take a left here, take a right here.
Because to me, he's coming through really distressed at this point. And he keeps taking me as if he wants to sort of drag the both of us down this area all the time.
Quite clearly I had an understanding of where Mark had gone, and Diane, without having that information, walked that route, and I followed her and listened intensely to what she had to say.
I don't feel he was alone. Somebody else was with him. And this guy that I feel is certainly not a friend that's with him at this point. It's as if he was staring Mark out. I kept looking at him, staring at him. It's as if he wanted me to see into his eyes, and I felt as if I was drawn into this guy's eyes. And he said, can you see what I've seen?
Walking with Diane as she was talking about how Mark was feeling, providing this information, it was quite unusual. Certainly the trained detective in me that was very much used to dealing with factual information was still remaining very open-minded. I didn't disbelieve her.
I was pleased by Marcella because she questioned a few times, but she took in all the information that I gave her, which was brilliant. And she accepted what I was saying. She didn't try and sway me anyway. She said, do you think he was here? How do you think he looked? Which way did you describe him? You know, all the right questions she should have been asking, really.
After 5 hours walking, Diane Lazarus and Detective Daly arrive at this housing estate in Birmingham's Highgate district.
This is definitely it, definitely.
And I remember actually getting to some flats, and he kept saying, Diane, here, this is the place.
The psychic connection is now stronger than ever. Mark begins to reveal the full horror of what happened to him that night.
He was really hitting him and beating him up. When Mark was pushed down and kept being pushed down, he had a blow here, right there, the back of his head. The impression he keeps giving me is that his head was put down.
But police have no information to suggest Mark would ever come to this area of Birmingham. He didn't have any friends here, and it's miles from his home.
It was really horrific. It was frightening. When I was actually standing there and hearing this information, it was unbelievable. I was looking in thinking, you know, where are you, Mark? He kept saying, you're not going to find me here, you're close, you're not going to find me here. But I'd been taken away, and I could see black bags being laid out. It was terrifying. For me, even, I was in a right mess, and I felt awful. And I thought, these people are going to think I am nuts to say these things to them now.
But the walk has a dramatic effect on Detective Daly. Her growing suspicion that something sinister had happened to Mark is now confirmed. She decides to upgrade the missing person case to a murder case. Diane Lazarus has done her job. It's been several months since Mark Green was first reported missing from home in Birmingham, England. With the help of psychic Diane Lazarus, police are now treating his disappearance as murder.
Because of some supportive information on the tape, as well as a very intense investigation, the decision was made quite quickly to upgrade the investigation to a murder investigation.
It's incredible, but a tape recording of a séance is being used by police to catch a killer. Using information provided by Diane Lazarus, police begin to search whole new areas of Birmingham.
Diane provided particular information with regards to locations and areas and materials that she felt were important, and that information formed part of my searching of areas.
It's an agonizing time for Mark's parents.
The waiting for Mark's parents was just completely devastating. Not only Mark's parents, but obviously key family members, and also Mark's partner at the time. And there was just no way of actually describing how completely devastated they were as every second ticked by, really.
But despite their best efforts, the police find no evidence of Mark.
It was very frustrating for me as an officer, the main officer in the investigation, not to find Mark when I felt so committed to finding Mark.
It isn't just Detective Daly who's growing frustrated.
The length of time that Mark was sort of waiting for this case to be resolved, it was actually frustrating for Mark. But in that time, I actually did his mum a reading, and his dad. And Mark actually told me that there'd be a television programme, and after that television programme, the whole thing would be actually solved.
This is the second time psychic Diane Lazarus has said a TV show will lead to the crime being solved. The first time was during the séance over 5 months ago.
When Diane spoke on the tape, she mentioned the use of media, a wide range of media, but also that we'd be attending a TV show.
Incredibly, in May 2002, Detective Daly is called and asked to take part in a talk show.
There's going to be a television programme.
With Diane's words ringing in their ears, she agrees to take part.
I certainly felt with regards to Mark Green that we really could not afford just to ignore it, and felt I had to justify to the inquiry, and felt I had to do it for the parents.
And Marcella rang me and said there is going to be a television programme, and I was really taken back. I remember watching it and thinking, it's not going to be long now.
A very unusual step.
During the programme, Detective Daly is criticised for using a psychic in the investigation.
This was a real help.
It enhanced the investigation.
Yeah, I noticed you used a very kind of careful word there, enhanced.
It was quite critical of the approach that I had personally taken with the use of clairvoyance mediums. What I stress and what's important for any family that's considering this, that there are lots of people out there that will take advantage, quite clearly, but there are still people out there that have talent and do want to actually help people when they're in such a vulnerable state to find missing loved ones.
The broadcast comes as a shock to one man in particular. Scared that the police are closing in, he decides to save himself and step forward with information about Mark's disappearance.
A person called James came forward and basically provided information to say that his brother was responsible for the murder of Mark. And that he was responsible for helping his brother dispose of Mark's body.
I was pleased that this gentleman had walked into the police station and obviously said that he'd been involved in committing the crime. because it's exactly what I'd said. I said there was going to be a television programme, and from that moment on, I knew somebody was actually going to own up to it, so to speak.
Incredibly, Diane was right. A television show has brought a killer to the surface. But what did happen to Mark on the night he disappeared, and where is he now? James's brother, Robert McMahon, is a neo-Nazi with a history of violent crime. Police arrest and charge him with the murder of Mark Green. But despite intense questioning, Robert refuses to confess to the killing, but James does talk. He tells police that Robert killed Mark on the night of January 17th in his flat in the Highgate district of Birmingham, the exact location Diane led Detective Daly to months earlier.
I remember Marcella giving me a call up and saying that the place where I'd taken her was actually a spit away from where Mark had actually been murdered. So it was well worth going up to Birmingham and taking that walk.
Before this case, Diane Lazarus had no connection to Birmingham. There is no way she could have known either the area or Robert McMahon. So how did she come so close to the murder scene?
Weeks before, months before, I was standing in the spot thinking, I can't be in the right place, no way. And yet, that information was brilliant.
Sometime after the murder, Robert McMahon takes Mark's body by taxi to his brother James's house in Coventry, 50 miles away. With James' help, they bury him under a pond in the back garden, just as Diane had seen in her horrific vision months earlier.
When I found out that Mark's body had been buried under a water feature, it was just unbelievable. It just proves that Mark's detail was so phenomenal, really.
On June 7th, 2003, a forensic archaeologist is brought in to excavate the site. As each layer of soil is carefully removed and analyzed, a body is discovered. 12 hours later, human remains are exhumed. After forensic tests are complete, the body is identified as Mark Green, and the cause of death is finally revealed.
When Diane described how Mark had been murdered, and when Mark's body had been found and forensic information came to light, it was quite factual that Mark had been killed to a blow to the back of the head.
When I found out that Mark had died from a blow to the head, it was confirmation for me that Mark was giving me the accurate information at all times.
How did Diane Lazarus know where Mark was killed, the cause of death, a blow to his head, and that he was buried underwater? The information she gave to police is all well documented and far too accurate to be guesswork. Diane has only one explanation. Mark told her.
I really feel I've got a duty to the spirit world because I feel I'm employed by them, so to speak. So when I'm given information, I really try and act on it straight away.
At their trial, it takes just 1 hour for a jury to find both McMahon brothers guilty.
Robert was sentenced to life for the murder of Mark Green, and his brother James was sentenced to 2 years for helping dispose of the body of Mark Green. I think Mark's parents had basically been to hell and back with Mark's disappearance and murder. I think the case, when it came to an end and when the two were found guilty and sentenced, was a relief to both Anne and Don. But again, it just re-emphasised the great sadness and the great loss in their life.
But why did Robert kill Mark? Was it because he was seen leaving a well-known gay bar? Was this a homophobic attack? Or was he just in the wrong place at the wrong time? If this was just a random act of violence, would police have solved this case without Diane Lazarus' information? One thing is certain, Diane's prediction that a TV show would lead to the crime being solved did encourage Mark's normally reticent parents to appear on TV with Marcella Daly. Without that show, James McMahon may never have come forward and given evidence against his brother, Robert.
I think Diane was helpful in solving this case. She certainly enhanced the inquiry and provided information that led to a number of lines of inquiries and obviously with the end result of finding the people that were responsible for Mark's murder.
To this day, Diane says that Mark still appears to her. She feels he is one of her most trusted spirit guides.
He still comes through, I still have conversations, and he's fantastic, actually.
trafficking as a career is fraught with occupational hazards, most notably violence, which in extreme cases can cause death. So when a father learns his wayward son has gone missing, he hopes for the best, but suspects the worst. And when the police can't find him, the father enlists the help of not one, but 2 psychics.
Now I got a sense right away that he was gone.
You're not looking for a living human being anymore. You're looking for a body, and a body can be anywhere.
But can anyone be absolutely certain, the police or the psychics, if the missing man is dead or alive? Back in 1994, Lawrence Embro was a businessman.
He was, for all intents and purposes, an upstanding citizen, a member of the community. He had a fiance. His fiance and he had were to be married in 3 or 4 weeks. So he had all the characteristics of a normal citizen.
Normal, except his business was dealing drugs. And apart from having a street name, Shaba, Lawrence Embro wasn't your stereotypical supplier.
The number one anomaly in this whole situation was that it didn't appear as though he actually used drugs or had any involvement in drugs. His lifestyle didn't depict that. His family relationships didn't depict that. It appeared as though his involvement was just that of business.
Apparently, Embro's plan was to make enough money to retire from the drug business, go straight, and start a new life with his fiancée in Dallas. But the best laid plans of mice and men.
Oklahoma City 911. Okay, and what's your name, ma'am? If you could just calm down, we've got officers on their way to help you out.
The call was from a woman who had been terrorized by thugs breaking into her home. The woman was Lawrence Embro's mother-in-law-to-be.
There were 3 people in the residence when the incident occurred. There was a woman, she's about 45 years old, and there were 2 children, 9.5 or 10 years old, where the door burst open, and these 2 individuals, both of them with weapons, immediately began striking her, forcing her to the ground, covering her face, loud abusive threats, threatening to kill her, dragging her and telling her, you know, don't look at me, don't look at me, forcing her to the back of the residence where the children were found. At the same time, we're asking, you know, where's Shaba's money? Where's Shaba keep his property, his stuff? Of course, they were dumbfounded by the request. They didn't know what to think, and of course the kids were terrified, and the mother or the woman was cooperative. They all were. As this continued, for whatever reason, and it appears to be just an opportunistic thing, one of the suspects took the woman to a different room and continued searching, and then at one point sexually assaulted her.
Apart from $40 taken from a piggy bank, the assailants leave empty-handed. When Evans interviews the victims, it becomes apparent that the men were looking for Lawrence Embro, but Embro is nowhere to be found. The fact that he doesn't return phone calls immediately raises suspicion.
Had it not been for the fact that the home invasion also included reference to him, there would have been some resistance to taking that kind of complaint or that kind of concern seriously. But given the fact that there was a reference made to him during the home invasion, and that coincided exactly with the time that you know they lost contact with him, it was obvious that they were related.
But in this case, because of the timing of Embro's sudden disappearance and the ransacking of his mother-in-law's home, Evans felt that there was an obvious connection. He called Embro's father and advised him to file a missing persons report with the Midwest City Police Department, the jurisdiction where Embro lived. Now there are 2 official police investigations. While Dan Evans of the Oklahoma City Police Department handles the home invasion, the missing persons case is assigned to Midwest City Detective Pam Gray. One of the first solid leads is the discovery of Embro's car, clean as the day it rolled off the assembly line.
A normal car is going to have prints unless somebody didn't want prints there, in which case That's a red flag. Everything indicated to me something had happened to Lawrence Embro, that he had been killed.
About a month into the investigation, Detective Gray received a phone call from Lawrence Embro's father.
He came to accept the fact that his son was probably dead, but he wanted the body. He wanted to be able to bury his son.
The father was so desperate to recover his son's body that he contacted a local psychic and wanted Gray to meet with her.
I said I would be willing to do anything because we kind of reached a stalemate, a standstill as far as the investigation. A lot of people were talking to the detective in Oklahoma City, and their indication to me was they had been advised not to talk to anybody else, including me. Oklahoma City was working one aspect. I was working the missing person on Lawrence Embro. It's really kind of tough when you run into a stone wall.
Gray, who'd never worked with a psychic before, was in for a rude awakening from her colleagues.
Well, there was a lot of laughter, and I would constantly hear there was no reason for any comments to be made because they would all be humming the theme song to the Twilight Zone. Way out there, Earth calling Sky King, you know. Just rude comments, but you get used to it.
Unperturbed, Detective Gray went and met with psychic Nita Lee.
When I went to the appointment with Nita Lee, her first response to me was, "He's dead." I felt at that point that he was dead.
I said, there's 3 guys that did it, and one of them seemed to be smaller than the other 2.
Gray was really hoping for Nita to pinpoint a location.
And I said, he's northeast of Oklahoma City. There's an old tin barn where he is. I said, he can hear the train as it goes by. So see, his spirit was very much there with him.
A train, an old tin barn, and northeast of the city, not exactly GPS accuracy.
We're talking a lot of farmland, a lot of pasture land, a lot of ranches. The scope that Nita Lee gave me would have been impossible to walk it.
But Nita did give one other clue. She said the body was not buried. If this was true, it was in practical terms a plus.
We would probably have a better chance of locating the body than if it was buried. Because if it was closer to town, somebody would start smelling it. If it's out in the field, that possibility isn't going to exist. But hopefully somebody who owns some land or wherever would come across the body.
Psychic Nita Lee was able to at least narrow down the search area to the northeast of Oklahoma City. Will a second psychic's clues lead Detective Pam Gray to the exact location and bring a sense of closure to Lawrence Embro's grief-stricken family? August 1994. It's been 3 months since Lawrence Embro went missing. When psychic Nita Lee's predictions don't locate what everyone assumes to be a missing body, the father brings in another psychic, Dr. Sally Heading.
My rule is that if I'm going to take a crime case, I have to work with the law enforcement agency. Sometimes, number one's for my protection, and number 2, sometimes there are things that I don't think the family needs to know. They're already in pain.
Sally never demands payment for her services, and with good reason.
Because you're not going to always see everything. You're not going to be able to read everyone or pick up on everything. And so if you have that kind of pressure on you, wouldn't there be the fear that you'd start making up shenanigans? You know, well, I really need that money and the mortgage overdue, so maybe this time I'll just fudge a little. So when you're not, your livelihood is not contingent on it, then you aren't under that pressure. And you could say, you know what, honey, I can't help you. I don't see a thing around you. It's an absolute blank. Or you can go ahead and do a reading and say, yes, I'm getting this, this, and this. And the same thing for the law work, because all of that is pro bono. I charge nothing. And I tell them my accuracy rate has been tested to be about 80%. If I knew when I was wrong, I would never be wrong. I don't have a clue, not a clue.
Sally, who doesn't like to travel, works from the comfort of her home in California.
I didn't think right off the bat that he was alive.
It was a confirmation of what I already felt, what Mr. Embro had come to feel, what Nita Lee had said, and now Sally Heading was saying it.
I had the sense, because there was money involved, that it was about selling drugs, and that there was a lot of anger around this money, that it was a deal that had gone wrong.
Once again, Sally and Detective Gray were on the same track.
Well, my thought was he hadn't got out of the drug culture, that either a drug deal had went bad, or he was involved in something else that somebody wanted to get rid of him.
One of the things I saw was a blue blanket. I knew they had not buried him. I saw a blue blanket over him.
In sync with Nita, the man is not buried. The blue blanket, a new and pretty specific clue.
I kept being shown flashing a metal sign that said Herefords on it. And I had the sense of prized Herefords. I also saw a barbed wire fence. I knew there was a gravel road. I could hear it. And I also knew that on the road going north, that there were poles all along the side of the road, telephone poles.
Sally is describing the rural area surrounding Oklahoma City exactly as Nita did.
I got a strong sense that people came up from Los Angeles, the 3 people, to meet another man. I had a sense that 3 were African American, and the 4th man was mixed, and that the 3 men were brought up to do Lawrence Monroe harm.
Now Sally is getting all these visions while sitting in her home in California, half a continent away from the crime scene, and the only connection with Detective Pam Gray is the other end of a telephone line.
Sometimes I'll see like flashes of images. Sometimes I'll feel as if I'm right there going through it, as if that person has walked through me or entered me and I'm walking along with them, or that they're holding my hand and showing me something. And sometimes it's not like hearing voices, it's from within. It's not like someone's whispering in your ear. Sometimes you'll hear a noise that might be connected with a crime scene or something.
I have to confess, I started imitating my fellow detectives humming the theme song of Twilight Zone. You know, I thought, I've got this phone call and I've got this woman telling me these things. And she's over 1,000 miles away. Yeah, right, you know.
I knew this was a woman who hadn't believed in Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy for many, many years, and I think I was on that list, you know, of people to be debunked.
But I tended to believe, or at least have an open mind, because some of what she had told me was consistent with what Nita Lee had told me. But it was strange to me how people 1,500 miles away from each other were consistent in what they were saying.
You know, I really believe that's the exceptional police officer who will set their own belief system aside and do whatever it takes to solve that case. And I think she has that kind of intelligence and insight.
Sally's final prediction was astonishing.
The body is going to be found by deer hunters. It's going to be happenstance that they come upon this body, and there will be 2 of them.
Unfortunately, the notion of 2 hunters finding the body doesn't actually define or even narrow down a time frame. In Oklahoma, there's always some unsuspecting creature in season. Deer, dove, crow, rabbit, wild turkey, pheasant, quail, even squirrels are on the hit list. Detective Gray drives the general area northeast of the city, hoping Sally's clues will lead her to the body of Lawrence Embro. But even she admits it's a long shot.
You would have to have literally millions of people just walking side by side to cover every square inch. It's like the needle in the haystack. Hopefully you will see something, but the possibility of that are slim and none.
Sure enough, the search proves to be a waste of time. All the clues provided by both psychics yield nothing. But what if Sally Heading came to Oklahoma? Perhaps she could pick up more information from being in the general vicinity of the crime. But there is one small snag.
I really didn't want to fly here. No offense to lovely Oklahoma, but I didn't need to. I read energy. I don't need to be someplace else. Energy is eternal. It's the same every place. I don't have to be right there to pick up on the energy. So I didn't feel I had to fly in. I knew I would not be the one that would, oh, here he is, I got him.
Despite this, she reluctantly makes the journey to Oklahoma City.
I came in for the family. There's nothing anyone can do that feels like enough. And so that was the energy that brought me here, to help the family. Did I feel that they were being any difference? No.
Pam Gray, the detective charged with finding the missing Embro, is out of town the day Sally arrives. Detective Larry Beaver, who has never worked with a psychic before, is assigned to escort Sally around the city.
I was a little bit apprehensive, to say the least, but I was a little excited also. Having an opportunity to work with someone outside the field of law enforcement seemed like it was going to be, like I said, exciting to me.
I said, you know, once we get into Midwest City, I'll take over. I'll just tell you where to go, you know. Fortunately, we didn't end up in Cucamonga.
Beaver takes Sally to a known crack house on the outskirts of the city. The rumor on the street was that this is where Embro may have met his end. 2 years before Embro went missing, a mass murder occurred here. 5 women were stripped and stabbed to death. Sally picks up on the bad vibrations.
Wow.
Can't imagine everything that's happened here.
A lot of bad things. A lot of bad things.
While Sally was convinced this was not the location, for the first time she got a sense that Lawrence Embro was executed.
I had the sense of him going to there were stairs. I'm not sure now if it was upstairs or downstairs, but going into a building. He walked in, there were other men in there. Some of them he didn't know. There was the energy of hostility. He was anxious. I could feel that sense of anxiety, discomfort. You know, I don't want to be here. Like God, I'm outnumbered. Then I had this sense of gray around his face or neck. I wasn't sure if it was duct tape or if it was rope. I wasn't sure if they put him in a trunk or a back seat. I knew that they had not driven more than 20 minutes.
The cop and the psychic continued to search the area, keeping roughly within a 20-minute radius from the city. For Sally, the sense of being in the right place is almost tangible.
Now, ever since we pulled up here, I've had an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. And my definition of déjà vu is that you're on path, you're right where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing, that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be, and that's the feeling I have right now.
With everything.
As Sally had predicted, the visit to Oklahoma didn't produce a body.
Well, when we wrapped things up at the last location, I felt a little skeptical at the time, not knowing Sally very well and not knowing what to expect. Okay, fine, yes, we didn't find the body, but we found all these signs and symbols and things that you had predicted we would find, and you're telling me now that you believe that, you know, when hunting season starts that the body will be found. I will just leave it at faith and see what happens.
What Sally had done to move the case forward was to narrow down the area where she thought the body might be found.
One person says something, you can kind of blow it off. 2 people say something, and where there were consistencies with what Sally Heading and Nita Lee, the prior psychic, had said, I was beginning to believe.
Detective Pam Gray's newfound faith drove her to action.
I contacted Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, and 2 deputies went out and rode this 450 acres of the land near where she had indicated his body was nearby.
The deputies find nothing. In November 1994, 2 men are out hunting quail. It's 30 days since psychic Sally Heading was wandering around these parts. It's also the last day of quail hunting season. The unsuspecting hunters make a horrifying discovery. It turns out to be the remains of Lawrence Embro, exactly as psychic Sally Heading predicted.
The body's going to be found by deer hunters.
And I said he's northeast of Oklahoma City, I
One of the
think.
things I saw was a blue blanket. I knew they had
There's an
not
old tin
buried
barn where he is, and it has great
flashing a metal sign that said Hereford's.
I said, he can hear the train as it goes by, and he could.
I also saw a barbed wire fence. I knew there was a gravel road. I could hear it.
Every single clue provided by both psychics, Sally Heading and Nita Lee, turned out to be right on target. All the indicators were in the vicinity of where the body was found. Detective Pam Gray was blown away.
There wasn't any more teasing. There wasn't any more humming of the Twilight Zone. However, nobody wanted to come right out and say, hey, psychics are great, psychics are wonderful, you know, this is the answer.
With the discovery of Embro's body, police were now dealing with a homicide. After an exhaustive investigation, detectives were able to piece together what had happened.
The story was Mr. Embro gave approximately somewhere between $20,000 and $60,000 to an associate of his to go to California to pick up a load of cocaine. He reportedly bought a Lexus, went out to clubs, frequented ladies or women, and squandered all the money. To most dope dealers, they have to, or they're going to demand respect, because if they don't have it, they're not going to be able to do their work. If you don't respect them, you're not going to pay them. And a lot of dope dealers will front you dope. In other words, they'll give you the dope without the money on your word that you're going to pay them back. They only do that if they know you or if they respect you as someone in the business. If you don't have any respect on the street, whether you're a dope dealer, you're a cop, you're a doctor, or whatever, you're not going to get very far. There's no honor among thieves, but they do value respect very highly. They don't always earn it, but they value it.
The gentleman with the new Lexus was Steve Gray. Embro, who naturally wanted his money back, put the squeeze on Gray. Gray called his gang member friends in LA, including a man by the name of Isaac Johnson. According to Johnson, Gray wanted Embro off his case, to do what it takes to scare him into backing off. As payment, they keep whatever money they find. However, before they get a chance to confront him, Embro makes a surprise visit to Steve Gray's girlfriend's apartment. Little does he know, the gang from LA are inside.
Lawrence comes to the door, opens up his jacket, shows his gun, says he wants his money or he wants him. So Steve invites him inside, says, I've got some money, let me pay you something, I'll get you the rest later. As soon as he walks in the door, Isaac Johnson tells us that he punches him in the face and Lawrence Embro goes down. They then commence to beating him with their weapons and with their hands and feet until they subdue him.
Lawrence Embro died from his wounds. The gang wrapped his head with duct tape, placed him in a blanket, and dumped him on the outskirts of town. The duct tape was exactly as Psychic Sally Heading described. The blanket, down to the color blue, was exactly as she described. Even Sally can't fully explain it.
I wish I could tell you how I know these things. How did I know it was a blue blanket? You know, I mean, there are a lot of colors to pick from there. Is it a lucky guess? Do you know there are times I've really wondered that seriously? Could these be lucky guesses? Am I just doing, randomly da-da-da-da-da? But it comes so quickly and so strongly, I don't believe so. The only way that I can come up with an explanation is that Lawrence was showing me where he was.
All the gang members were charged and found guilty in the murder of Lawrence Embro. Lawrence Embro was 29 when he was murdered. He had planned on going straight, getting married, and moving to Dallas. Unlike many in his trade, he wasn't a drug user. Apparently, he was simply tempted by the lure of making a quick buck, a temptation that cost him his life. May 1995. A woman disappears in Northern California. No one can find her. Then a psychic has a terrible vision.
I could feel her energy, absolutely frantic with fear. She knew she was going to be murdered.
For weeks, they search, but they can't find her.
She's in a ditch, water not far away.
Can the psychic lead police to her body so they can convict her cold-blooded killer? May 24th, 1995. The rural town of Dixon, Northern California. Martin Reese, a police officer from the nearby town of Davis, searches the streets for his ex-sister-in-law, Rosa Talamantes. A single mother of 7, Rosa went out for a beer the night before and didn't return home. With children to feed and get ready for school, this is not like her. She's a responsible mother. Her family are anxious.
My thought at that point was that she may have taken off, who knows, to spend the night somewhere and just didn't bother to tell the children, but somehow in the back of my mind it didn't seem right.
To make matters worse, the night before, Rosa's eldest daughter, Elisa, had a terrifying premonition.
Around midnight, something in my stomach just pulled really hard, and I had a bad pain in my stomach, so the next morning, when I got to the house and found the kids alone, I asked them where my mother had went, and they said she had went to the store with Jose and never came back.
Jose Aniquez, Rosa's boyfriend, is an immigrant farm laborer. Their relationship is volatile. He helps feed her children, but he's also jealously possessive, and their arguments often flare into violence. Elisa goes straight out to the work camp where Jose lives. Maybe her mother had stayed the night with him, but neither of them are there. Frantic, Elisa goes to the police to report her mother missing.
When I got that pain in my stomach, I knew that she was dead. She wouldn't have stayed out that long with her kids at home. She'd never left them alone. Deep down inside, I knew she was really dead.
But without proof that her mother is dead, the police tell Elisa they must wait 24 hours before they can file a missing persons report. Detective Sergeant Elaine Perry was friendly with Rosa.
She and we developed a rapport and a good just communication between us. One day in passing, she had indicated to me that she was in a relationship, but the individual had a bad temper. And she had told him she didn't want to see him any longer. And she had been seeing another gentleman that had also lived here in town.
Rosa had already told Jose that she was going to leave him. And he had threatened her that if she left him, he would kill her.
My fear was that he may have beat her up and just left her abandoned somewhere.
After combing the streets without finding her, Martin offers his services to the Dixon police. As a relative of Rosa's and a fellow police officer, he wants to do all he can to help. Feeling increasingly desperate, Elisa goes back out to look for her mother's boyfriend, Jose. And this time, she finds him, though she soon wishes she hadn't.
I asked him, where was my mother? And he said he had no idea where she was. That's when I told him that I had spoke with the police in town, if he could please follow me into town because they wanted to speak with him. So he followed me, and halfway down the road, he flashed the lights at me and told me to pull over. So I pulled over, and I could tell he was walking up to my vehicle, very antsy, like he wanted to strangle me or do something to me. But he noticed I had my little brother with me, so he just told me, just be a minute, I'm gonna have to return back to the camp, I forgot something. And I said, okay, because I didn't want to frustrate him more, so he went back and I drove into town.
Elisa rushes to the police station to tell them she's found Jose. They must catch him quick before he escapes. Jose had left the camp the night before, but he came back at dawn drunk.
It appears that he did return to the field because he wanted to get a paycheck. He made a statement to the coworker about sending a person to heaven.
Police arrest Jose as he's about to leave the camp. Being the last person to see Rosa, he's a prime suspect. They hold him on an outstanding drunk driving offense, which gives them time to find out what happened to Rosa. Martin helps Elaine interview Jose. He's cold and indifferent and claims he knows nothing of Rosa's disappearance.
His events were that they had bought some alcohol and they had been drinking and that they had taken a drive, and after that he brought her back and he has no idea where she went after that.
But Rosa's children have already told police that he didn't bring her back that evening. In Jose's car, police find a pair of Rosa's earrings, which apparently she never removed. They also find a shirt stained with blood, which Jose claims came from a nosebleed. Meanwhile, Martin begins searching the fields around Jose's work camp. But with such a vast area to cover, it's a fruitless exercise. Days go by. Rosa's family are desperate. Then a colleague of Martin's suggests he make a phone call, which gives the investigation a whole new focus. Psychic Sally Heading is a doctor of psychology and parapsychology. She's also done a lot of crime work with the police.
I'm good at finding bodies. I don't have to be there. In fact, I prefer not being there. It's easier for me to just do it with remote viewing. When someone dies, they're still there, they're just no longer in body. If energy is continuous, then there's no reason for me to go someplace to see something. I can do it just right where I am.
The normally skeptical Sergeant Martin Reese is willing to give it a try.
Hello, Sally, this is Martin. A lot of times, we may hamper ourselves by not considering every option available out there. And I have to remind myself, what is the focus here? Why am I going through this? Because I want to get resolution for the family, for the kids. So, why not?
She had a very strong feeling that this man was capable of taking her life. When Martin gave me the first phone call, I started getting a very strong sense of what had happened to this woman. In fact, as I talked with Martin, I knew that she was dead.
Martin is shocked. The psychic has confirmed the family's worst fears. But how will he prove who killed Rosa? Rosa Talamantes has disappeared. Her boyfriend, Jose, is the last person to have seen her, but he insists he doesn't know where she is. The police lock him up on a drunk driving charge while they investigate. But after a week of searching for her, they find nothing. Her family fear the worst. Martin Reese, an out-of-town police officer and relative of Rosa's, is helping the police to try to find her. He contacts psychic Dr. Sally Heading, who confirms their worst fears.
She'd been murdered by her boyfriend.
Rosa's children tell police that the fateful evening began when Jose took Rosa out to buy some beer. But this trip to the store wasn't like others.
What was unusual about this particular time was that she went without the kids, as she always had. One of the kids tied to her hand, and the smallest one stuck on her hip. When one of the kids offered to go with them, apparently he said he didn't want anybody to go with him, just the two of them to go to the store. And that's what was unusual.
Sally believes it was Rosa who made the children stay behind.
She knew she was going to be murdered. If she brought her children along, they would be too. If she didn't go with him, he would murder her there and take her children too. They'd all be gone.
Under repeated questioning, Jose starts to change his story.
Jose stated that they had gone out to the camp and that there was a verbal argument, and she got angry at him and had jumped out of his car, and that he turned his car around and went looking for her but was unable to locate her. So he at that point went back to the camp and went to sleep for the evening.
But Sally's vision shows a frighteningly different sequence of events.
He wanted power and control over this woman. He sensed he was losing her. She was a piece of property to him, and he wasn't ready to let go of her. And if he wasn't going to have her, then no one else would. He took her to where he works the land, because that's where he's comfortable. It's a place where he feels in control.
And once out in the fields, Jose gives vent to his violent jealousy. Sally experiences the harrowing last moments of Rosa's life.
I had the sense of pain around my neck, of not being able to breathe. I had the sense of something burning me on my neck. The killing blow was at the neck and the chest that she bled out. That she was in a ditch on the side of the road, curled up in the fetal position.
During the initial conversation, Sally told me, Dad, we needed to go back and search at the place where Jose lived.
I knew she wasn't terribly far away from the ranch. I believe I said she was within 2 to 5 miles, something like that. There was a great sense of urgency on this case because of the concern about him taking off, concern about flight down to Mexico, not being able to apprehend him.
Just over 2 weeks after Rosa's disappearance, a massive search is made of the area surrounding Jose's work camp.
They brought out the mounted police, the canine. They had dogs that specialize in searching for bodies. They had people up in the sky. Just all the volunteers came together and searched the area.
When you're getting into our rural areas, there's miles and miles of roadways and acreage and ditches, drain ditches and ditches in fields, and the ground being constantly worked up, and that somewhat makes a search more difficult.
But even after such a huge effort, there is no sign of Rosa.
We were disheartened by it because, of course, being small agencies in this county, it is difficult to get everyone together like that. And our hope, again, was to find Rosa. We needed to give that family some closure, be it a positive closure or a negative closure. But those children needed to know where their mother was.
My brothers and sisters were scared, and they didn't really know what was going on. They weren't sure. They were also like in shock. They were in disbelief. They didn't want to believe that my mother was gone. The hardest part was waking up in the middle of the night with my little sister screaming and crying and trying to run around the house looking for my mother.
Unmoved, Jose offers the children no hope. He insists he's innocent. And without a body, there's no proof she's dead. He could be telling the truth.
There is always the possibility that what Jose was saying truly happened.
But the evidence is stacking up against him. Tests now show that Jose's blood is type B, and the blood on the shirt found in his car is type A, like Rosa's.
I would say that with the information that I had and the evidence, the shirt, the earrings, my thought was at that point that she was not alive.
Now, certain that Sally is right about Rosa's death, Martin calls her again. The psychic has had another revelation.
This guy.
She asked me if Jose was likely to use abusive language with her in Spanish, and I told her yes, he was a Spanish speaker, because she kept hearing the word puta, something like that coming up.
He said, "You think he called her that? That means whore in Spanish." And I said, "No, I see it being written out. I'm being shown the letters. I'm convinced it's on a sign not far from where her body is." He said, "Well, there's the Puta Creek. That's it."
The Puta Creek happens to flow near Jose's labor camp. It covers a large area. Spurred on by Sally's vision, Martin spends days searching the surrounding fields and ditches.
You can see that it's just acres upon acres of different crops. And a lot of the grass that is left from the previous crops grows over the canals, over the drainage ditch, making it nearly impossible to look into them. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. My mindset was now that if he buried her in a ditch or in a canal somewhere where he only knows, there's a possibility that the body may never be found. And so I was already starting to toy with that idea that perhaps the kids would never have resolution or find the peace and at least being able to give her a proper burial.
For the next 10 days, the searches continue throughout the locality, but there is still no sign of Rosa. Could the psychic be wrong?
I wasn't worried about being wrong. I was frustrated. I was frustrated that I wasn't being shown more as to where she was. For some reason, all I was able to be shown was that sign, a ditch, and water not far away, and I knew she wasn't far away from the ranch.
I really didn't stop to analyze, well, is she really telling me, good information? Should I believe her anymore? Not really. I don't think that really came to play. I think Sally at that point was one more resource that I needed to use.
As the search for Rosa's body enters its 4th week, her family do everything they can to keep up public interest in the case.
I was feeling confused and maybe not really believing that she was really gone. This really dear friend of mine started helping me. She put it in the paper, I think, on the news, that we needed volunteers for a search. And we had a lot of people help. And we went out and searched for her, see if we could find her somewhere out there in the fields. We looked everywhere, ditches and canals and everywhere, and we just could not find her.
Meanwhile, Jose bides his time in silence. If they don't find Rosa's body, once he's served his drunk driving conviction, he'll be free.
If you don't have the body, if you will, you're not going to be able to convince a jury that he killed her. He's going to have to be released. He'll flee the area. And as the focus and the interest in the case dissipates, that's it. And the children would be left with this unresolved loss of their mother.
But psychic Sally Heading is still working the case. And a new vision could easily destroy any hopes Jose has of getting away with murder. Rosa Talamantes has vanished. She's presumed dead. The scant evidence points to her boyfriend, Jose, who insists he's innocent. He's jailed on a drunk driving charge while the police search for her. But after nearly a month, even with clues provided by psychic Sally Heading, Rosa's body can't be found. Martin Reese, a police officer and relative of Rosa's, knows that without a body, the killer will go unpunished, and Rosa's children will be left with the unexplained disappearance of their mother.
I thought that, yeah, he would probably get away with it because where we weren't finding her body, nobody had found her yet, and time was just going by.
Then Sally gives Martin some alarming news.
Sally mentioned that this was not something that Jose had done alone. I also knew Rosa was a fighter, strong. You couldn't just walk up and overpower her. So either Jose got her very, very drunk to be able to overpower her, or had help.
Following this new lead, Martin goes out to interview Jose's co-workers. Sally warns him it could be a mistake.
Well, I felt very strongly that it would be a wild goose chase. They wouldn't talk to him, that this man was someone they were afraid of, someone they were intimidated by.
But when I spoke with Sally on the phone, she told me that they would literally stonewall me, that they would not be cooperative. She said one of them would be dark-complected and with tattoos on his arms.
I had the sense that he had a tattoo on his left forearm of Jesus, and that this man was going to be very disappointing to Martin. Like, how dare you come out here and ask us questions like this?
As Sally predicted, Jose's co-workers give nothing away. Soon afterwards, they disappear, leaving more questions unanswered. The search is losing momentum.
We began searching immediately after she went missing. And within days, of course, there was high publicity, a lot of interest, a lot of relatives and volunteers, friends of the family came together. But at some point, it was noticeable that the volunteers were not as many. Numbers were dwindling down.
The case was going cold. It can be somewhat depressing. We had these children who were grieving, and that to me was tugging at my heartstrings.
But Sally doesn't give up. She continues to focus on Rosa, hoping she might finally see a clue that will lead them to her body. Finally, Sally does see something new. It's an unexpected twist.
Sally told me that the body will not be found by the police, that somebody not official will find the body, or a passerby.
This is good news. If Rosa's body is found soon, her children will be able to bury their mother and see her killer behind bars. And if Jose did kill her, alone or with help, they must find Rosa's body within the year, or he will have served his drunk driving conviction and, like his friends, vanish. It's a race against time. Then, exactly a month from the day Rosa disappeared, a farm worker discovers her badly decomposed body in a drainage ditch near Putta Creek. Her throat has been cut, and she is lying in a fetal position, exactly as Sally described it. Can Rosa's body now provide the evidence needed to convict her killer? Police piece together the events of that tragic night. Rosa had been dating Jose for several months, but his violent jealousy made her want to end the relationship. She began seeing another man. Elisa believes he was the father of Rosa's youngest child. They had been together before Jose appeared.
He was jealous of my mother leaving him to go and be with my sister's father. And I think he wanted to get rid of either him, the baby's father, or do something to my mother.
When he pulled up, she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was going to murder her. She began to beg for her life. Please, the children, please don't. And it just continued to escalate and continue to escalate. And his language became more violent and foul. And when she saw the knife, she began to pray because she knew she was dead. And I could feel her energy, absolutely frantic with fear. My children. Who is going to be there for my children?
When I found more information about the position and the location of the body, the fact that she was face down in a fetal position in a ditch, that the ditch had, at some point, had water in it, and that there was indication that her throat had been the point of injury, that matched up with the information that Sally had provided.
When they found her, I cried. I cried my eyes out. Because there's still a part of me that wanted to be wrong so she could still be alive. That would have been joyous to have been wrong about. Just joyous.
Rosa's body seals Jose's fate. Whether he acted alone or had help, no one will ever know. But forensic analysis puts him at the crime scene and proves it's Rosa's blood on his shirt. Jose is convicted of second-degree murder. His defense claims he'd been motivated by jealousy causing emotional distress. He was jailed for life and must serve 16 years before he can be considered for parole.